Next month on Showtime, a great thriller and real TV history. The world's first made-for-pay television film. It is a thriller indeed. It's filled with all those things you like. Lost treasure with a curse, excitement, chases, good guys, bad guys, exotic jungle locations. But why talk about Falcon's Gold? It's coming up next month. Let's take a look at it right now. Oh, veteran actor John Marley stars with a young star you first probably knew from the Manions of America miniseries. You knew him perhaps as the murderer on Death on the Nile. Or, right this moment, he stars in Jaws 3. But right now, he stars in Falcon's Gold. In this moment, Simon MacCorkindale is here, bringing his proud Scottish name?
A Scottish name, indeed.
How many MacCorkindales are there?
I think there are only 5 of us.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a small tribe.
It's a small tribe.
But a noble.
No, there are a lot of people who spell it slightly differently, but our spelling, I think there are only 5.
Well, you've done Falcon's Gold, a genuine old-fashioned adventure.
A genuine old-fashioned adventure, absolutely.
And you are one of the good guys.
I guess.
I hope. I hope.
Yes,
had you worked with John Marley before?
No, we'd never met before.
Really?
No, never even met before. He was delightful.
Mm-hmm.
We had a great time. It's one of those strange things. You go onto a movie and for some reason or other, 2 people really just hit it off. And we didn't communicate off the set at all, really, to speak of. And yet on set, it was just magic. We managed to find the things to do and playing off each other. I think probably because we were both playing things that we'd never had a chance to really play before, which was the comedy element that we were putting into it. He's always been known as the heavy, and I've always been known as the boring straight guy. So, here we got in with something a little different for once.
Come along, Professor.
I studied anthropology at Yale.
Harvard.
Yale.
Harvard.
Do you want that interview or not?
Yale.
Your journalist in Falcon's Gold is a tough.
He's a different kind of journalist. I mean, he is a top-flight international photojournalist who goes out on really major assignments. It's not your gossip columnist type. And as a result, I mean, those guys, I mean, they work very hard, and they're a very different kettle of fish and wouldn't even want to be locked into the same.
Well, Dr. Christopher Falcon.
Professor Falcon, I presume?
Are you all right, son?
Sure.
Then get the hell out of here.
The name's Richards. Hank Richards.
Get him the hell out of here.
Used to be Archibald Chumley Smythe. But that, of course, never fitted on the byline.
I like Hank because he doesn't take it too seriously most of the time. But at the same time, you know, when the danger is there, he takes it absolutely and plays everything for what it's worth.
Right, head on. He'll face any challenge.
Absolutely. And the tongue-in-cheek hero is all very well, the one who kind of just glibly glides through. But I think ultimately the way to make these characters work is to have that as the premise, the basis. But then when you're actually looking straight into the eyes of a snake or whatever you're looking at, that you see that he's just as frightened as the member of the audience is supposed to be too.
Yes.
And then having shot him, then he's got the funny line. But not actually while he's going through the motions of saving his life or saving somebody else's life.
Because Hank Richards deals with a great many obstacles in this
Yes,
film.
yeah. Do you know, it's extraordinary. Every now and then people say, well, what sort of the action sequence in the film? And I sort of say, well, there was this sequence, and there was that sequence, and there was the fight over the pit, and then there was this, and you know, you find you run out of fingers.
Yes. What do you feel being a part of that sort of history? I mean, the first movie ever made for pay TV, you know you're in the record books.
Yes, I think that's very exciting. I really do, and I'm glad that it's finally happened. You know, this whole cable thing and pay TV has been so kind of out of proportion with what it's going to do and what's going to happen and this, that, and the other, that finally now we're beginning to see people putting their money where their mouth is, finally.
Yes.
And I'm glad to see that, because I think that's where the future of work for actors is going to be. The next thing is to try and get people used to the idea that there is not big money in it at the front end, so that we stop spoiling the projects by people trying to get too much up front.
But aren't you also glad the movie was not a dog, as it could have been?
Well, only the public will actually decide whether it's a dog or not.
Well, I think it's quite good.
I mean, I'm happy with it, and I think everybody who's connected with it is happy with it. But we all know the history of that, too. And ultimately, it's up to whether the public like it, and, you know, in a little while, they'll see.
When I research you, Simon, we learned that back when you were 8 years old, you wrote a play, your first play, and it dealt basically with an excess of rum drinking.
Yes, I don't know where I got that from.
I have to ask, how did you study rum drinking at the age of 8?
Well, I don't know. I think it was a pirate story. And I guess that I had an archetypal view of pirates was yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. And I seem to remember that line came in quite a lot all the way through.
Quite frequently?
It was an enormous cast, lots of action, lots of appalling dialogue, and to read it now is really hysterical.
You did save it, though.
I've got bits of it, yes.
But I'm impressed at the age of 8, you knew what you wanted, and you were leaning...
Well, I didn't realize
direction.
that that's what I wanted. I mean, in terms of now. At that time, it just came to me one afternoon that I wanted to write a play, and I remember to this day feeling really good about sitting down and getting on and writing it. And once I'd written it, it didn't occur to me otherwise than to take it to one of the teachers and say, let's put it on. And they said, yeah, let's put it on, and we did. Bizarre. The things that one does when one's young and doesn't have any idea what you're doing, you do a lot more than when you suddenly look at the world and think, my God, I can't do that.
But when you look back and realize that before you were 20, you wrote, produced, directed, or starred in some 24 productions.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
It's truly
extraordinary. I mean, when I was 18, I actually toured 3 plays in 2 successive years, 3 plays one year, 3 plays the next, to Belgium. And I took them from my school to Belgium, and then from there back to another school in England. And, I mean, I don't know who paid or how it was done, but it was done. And nowadays, I mean, I barely get out of the house without making some mistake.
I know, but your mistakes must have been good ones.
I guess.
What brought you to Zeffirelli's attention?
That was a long story and rather a fascinating one. On my 21st birthday, I did an audition for a commercial, and I got it, and the next day I was shooting the commercial. I did the job, came home on the bus, got off the bus, came home, and my agent had just called me and said that Zeffirelli wanted to meet me because a picture had been sent to him by the drama school that I'd been in. That had made me look kind of more like Michael York than Michael York did. And the description of the character was they wanted a young Michael York. Poor Michael. But that's when I first met him for a film he was going to make called Camille. And he wanted me to play the part of Gaston, who is Armand's best friend. The film never got made, and that was it. But 2 years later, when he was casting Jesus of Nazareth, he still had all the pictures that he took of me at that time and called me in, initially with the idea of being one of the disciples. That didn't work, and I thought, no more of it. And then one Monday morning, I was at home, and the phone rang and said, could I get out to Morocco the following day to play a centurion for a week, which I went and did. And when I was there, he said, I'd like you to come back and do another 3 months on the picture, beginning of the following year, which is what I did. And then out of that came Death on the Nile indirectly, because his casting director, Dyson Lovell, was the casting director on Death on the Nile, so...
And it just followed as dominoes might.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. So one picture sent to Zeffirelli in 1973 resulted in Death on the Nile. It was my first major feature, and to go in with equal billing with all those people.
And such an important role.
And such an important, I mean, it was the pivotal role in many ways. It had to be right, or else the picture wasn't going to work. They never treated me as if I was a newcomer. From the beginning, first day, I mean, it was as if I had as much experience as they had. No one tried to put me down or to make me feel any way less than they were, which was wonderful.
Did you learn from any of the masters when you're there? It's a corny question, but does it happen? When all this talent is assembled, what do you learn?
You do learn. Sometimes it's very difficult to assess what you learn. And I reckon that everything that I know in this business, I have learned from the people that I've worked with, by really operating a kind of what I call the sponge technique, which is you absorb everything in, and eventually when you need it, you just squeeze it out. And you don't necessarily know when it's going in or when it's not. It's just literally being aware of everything that's going on around you. And it's extraordinary what you find you remember. And then when you see it later on film, you say, oh, I know where I got that from. That was something that so-and-so did way back in rep, 8 years ago. But you don't remember it at the time that you're actually putting it into the computer bank and saying, I know I'm going to use that sometime.
Yes,
because as soon as you do that, you then put it in somewhere where it may not quite fit. It just comes out of you organically. And that's why I don't have any idols in this business. I mean, everybody is my idol in terms of people who work.
Because we can all learn from anyone who
Absolutely, even people who are very bad you can learn from.
When I'm reading about Death on the Nile, one thing that comes to my mind, I think I'm right, I know the royal premiere, you met the Queen of England.
Yes, indeed.
I would think that would be an historic moment that would just boggle the mind. How did you treat meeting your Queen?
Well, it was indeed a historic moment. It's the most wonderful thing to do, and she's a marvelous, marvelous woman. In fact, I have a little story about that, because as I was shaking her hand and we spoke a few words, and I can't now to this day remember what was said, I became kind of mesmerized by her, and I just watched her go down the line to the next person. And Prince Philip, who is no mean person, was standing there, and he had to wait for me to kind of realize that he might have been coming along behind, and they eventually had to tap me on the shoulder and say, this is Prince Philip, and I went, oh, yes, sorry, because I was so captivated by just looking at the Queen.
In front of the camera and directing, many people might not know that you've certainly left your mark around the world as a director.
Beginning to now, yes. Basically, it's a matter of if you know what you're doing and you've got your preparation done, and you go in and explain